Hi everyone, welcome to this session on options to limit the GDP fall. In the earlier session on potential fall in GDP, we had worked out for the base case the GDP could potentially contract by 50 lakh crore rupees without the government intervention. In this session today, we will try to understand the options before the government to limit the damage to GDP fall, and at the same time, what is the financial commitment that is required by the government to stop the fall. For this, let's refer to the GDP expenditure approach, which is defined as the sum of household consumption, private investment, government spending, and the net exports. Let's get a sense of the values for the various components for 2019-20. In 1920, the investment, which can be equated to the gross capital formation, was USD 191 billions, which is equivalent to 13 lakh crore rupees. The government capital spending was rupees 4 lakh crore, and the net exports was $154 billion, which is equivalent to 11 lakh crore rupees. This gets us the consumption value of 175 lakh crore rupees for 2019-20 in the GDP. This constitutes to almost a share of 87% in the GDP. Now we know the GDP as per the income approach has to be the same as the GDP as per the expenditure approach. Going by the same corollary, the fall in GDP as per the income approach has to match with the fall in GDP as per the consumption approach. This implies that the standalone fall in consumption and the associated fall in consumption due to the multiplier effect on change in investment, government spending, and net exports will be equal to rupees 50 lakh crore. Now it is fair to assume that the government will not change the spending in these difficult times. So the fall in GDP is equal to the total fall in consumption after factoring in the change in effect of investments and the net exports. Now let's try to understand what is the amount of financial commitment that will be required on part of the government to limit the damage of 50 lakh crore GDP. Government spending has a multiplier effect on GDP, and the multiplier effect is given by the inverse of marginal propensity to save. For India, MPS is 27%. This gives us the multiplier effect on G as 3.7 times. Taking the multiplier effect of 3.7 times, government would need an additional spending of 13.5 lakh crores rupees to bridge the GDP gap of rupees 50 lakh crores. Now the required investment of 13.5 lakh crore rupees is only if 100% of it is spent in capital projects. But that might not be a feasible solution. And also, government may not be able to raise 13.5 lakh crore rupees. So let's work out the different scenarios which are feasible and understand what could be the potential contraction in GDP and what will be the fiscal deficit for the government. Let's assume scenario 1, in which government is able to arrange 10 lakh crore rupees of additional investment. And out of that, 30% goes towards driving the direct consumption, which is roughly 3 lakh crore rupees. So 7 lakh crore rupees goes towards capital spending. This gives us an additional GDP on capital investment of 25 lakh crore rupees. And taking the 3 lakh crore rupees as direct consumption-driven impact, we get an incremental impact of almost 29 lakh crore rupees on GDP. And we still fall short of 21 lakh crore rupees in GDP. This effectively means we still have a GDP contraction of almost 12% and a fiscal deficit shooting up to 10% of the GDP. Government is really challenged to raise finances and the fiscal deficit is already stressed. So considering that, we have worked out an alternative scenario in which government is able to raise only up to 8 lakh crore rupees of additional spending. And also considering the grim situation of COVID and the migrant and poor workers, government may be forced to direct a major portion of its spending towards direct consumption. So let's assume 50% of the additional spending goes towards direct consumption, and we have additional spending of 8 lakh crore rupees available with the government. In this scenario, the government gets to hit a fiscal deficit of 9%, but the GDP contraction is much larger at 18%. Not sounding too pessimistic, I would feel that the GDP would contract by roughly 10%, provided government is able to manage additional spending of 10 lakh crore rupees. Thank you very much for listening to me. In the next session, we will know what are the implications of deficit financing and what's driving the stock market. Stay tuned for more interesting sessions on strategy, economics, and business. If you like the session, press the like, share, and subscribe button. See you for the next session. Bye.